Hello, ladies and gents. It's Thomas Ruse with the Poet Warriors. And today I want to talk about how to start a story, a fictional story, a short story, a novella, a novel, a magnum opus. Love that word. Or is it two words? Magnum opus. Who knows? We'll figure it out. Um, this is meant for aspiring writers or those who dabble in writing and think, oh, I can never do it. 20 years ago, as I was writing mainly poetry and plays, screenplays as well, I never thought that a novel was something that I could do or attempt to do or had the possibility to do. But here I am 20 years later, and I've mainly worked on long prose pieces. A couple of short stories, but not too many more. More on the longer prose piece, novels, novellas, novels in verse. So, how does one start? What's the starting point to write a novel? Well, I can only share my experiences, and one of my novels was basically started where here I am in my room, and I was living in Philadelphia at the time. It was a very cold, it's February night, and I looked out my window, and it's bare trees, very barren landscape, and that was kind of the image that started my this novel. And at the time, it started this novel about a protagonist, a young man going through, a man in his 20s, a young man trying to find himself in this kind of setting. Because that image kind of stuck with me. The city of Philadelphia, even though I never named it Philadelphia, it was an unnamed city in the novel, but that image and knowing the city of Philadelphia and all the streets and all the things, all the time I've spent there was a character. It was like a character in that first novel of mine. So it was just worked off that one image of that window, looking out the window, and how it returned to me, like as a motif almost in my own mind, even though I didn't paint that actual picture of looking out the window. That was like it was a starting point, and it kind of carried. I revisited that image throughout. Or my novel that got published, An Expectation of Plenty. I was visiting Lisbon, Portugal. It was a first for me, and there I was in one of the parks I frequented, and I looked to my left, and there was this gentleman, regular-looking fellow, but when I kind of studied him a little bit more closely, something was off about him. He was well dressed, something, but he was mumbling to himself. He was a little off, and that figure started my idea of Vincent, who turned out to be this amnesiac and was a homeless man, even though this guy that I observed in the park was actually not homeless. But I imagined this image into a homeless man who had amnesia, like didn't know himself, didn't know what was going on, and so forth and so on. So basically, like, you can start with an image, a visual. You could start with a word that, a name, something that pops into your head that could be the thing that ignites. A sentence. A sentence can pop into your mind, and that could be the opening sentence or the closing sentence, but usually the opening sentence of your novel. And you go from there. Some novelists like to plot it out, like to outline, like to prepare. I'm not that kind. I usually work off, like I said, in maybe an image, mainly an image, a visual, because I'm oriented in that way. And I kind of discover things as I go along. I have an idea, it's kind of there. It's there lingering, especially the visual. And it could be even a sentence, and it kind of sets me off. And then I instinctually add things as I go along. I'm that type of writer, and I know there's writers like that as well, that they imagine as they go along. And of course, it's a work of imagination, even if you plot it out and you outline it. And there are people like that who have to have that kind of regimented, those building blocks. Whereas I have to kind of just kind of not feel it, but instinctually go and try to follow it. I mean, there's times early on when I lost my way. That first novel that I was telling about, this Philadelphia novel, I did digress a lot, and I would go this way where I'm like, oh boy, I'm So you learn as you go along, and you learn how to catch, so you don't go that far. You can catch it. The more you write, the more you're aware of, kind of controlling, having a little bit of control, and not letting things spin out of control so much. The narrative spin out of control. Another thing for aspiring writers. Well, what do you write? What is usually what's the heart of a story? Well, the heart of a story is an individual, the protagonist, right? At odds with something, or a co-protagonist, maybe two people, maybe a village, but usually it's one. Some people call it the hero's journey, or whatever you want to describe it. It's usually this one person, this center of this world, this universe, this world that you're creating, and everything revolving around that. And that person is at odds either with something inside themselves, with another person. Maybe their life is good to start off with, and in the course of the novel, things start falling apart. Things start happening. A piece of news arrives, unexpected, at odds with, right? Either with themselves, with another person, with a community, with an institution, with the greater world, with forces outside their control, at odds. And therein lies the tension, therein lies the conflict, and it's that protagonist. It's interesting if you could do two, maybe more, a group of people, but usually it ends up, even like if you look at novels like Lord of the Flies, where you have this group of children, stranded on this island. I think you had those two, the faction, I forget, Ralph and Jack, I think they were. I can't remember the names, but they were the two kind of the nemesis, the protagonists of that piece, with all these other, kids surrounding them as supporting characters. But yeah, those are some thoughts, some ideas on how to start a novel, a longer prose piece, and I hope to help. All right, peace.
Mm.
Tasty.